Okay, let's see now. Give me an alert. All right, well, are you able to see it on your phone? Did you get an alert or anything? Yeah. Trying to make sure people are coming and give it another look. Okay, we're racking up. Alrighty. Okay, well, I guess we'll just wait to see if my phone is doing anything. Maybe if I just search, wait, there we go. Cool. Let's tune into that. All right, there we go. We got about 100 people. That's good enough. We can go ahead and get started. How's it going, everybody? Hope you have been having a good Sunday here in East Tennessee. Things got a little messy as we got into the afternoon hours, starting maybe around 11 o'clock for some people, and that progressed as we got into the afternoon, especially for people that were further down into the Southern Valley and the Southern Plateau. Of course, you look at the radar right now, not much to see. We're in the middle of a lull in activity as we get through these evening hours. We're not expecting more of those storms until we get around, if not after midnight. So I'm just going to recap really quick some of the storms that we saw earlier this afternoon, mainly the storm reports. One of the big things that we saw were quite a bit of storm reports for downed trees and a lot of power outages for people. We are seeing here in Friendsville, Riceville, Bradbury, Spring City, a lot of these areas as you get down into the Southern Valley and further into the Southern Plateau as well, mainly reporting trees down from that thunderstorm damage. We saw some gusty winds get upwards of 60 miles per hour, not too much hail this time around, and we were not looking at any tornado threat. Now, when it comes to rainfall, we definitely got some very high totals as well. You see places getting over 3 inches right here in Morgan County between Wartburg and Rockwood, around 2.6 inches over here as you work your way into Fentress County, a little bit of Cumberland County. Generally, this kind of teal color, that's around 1/2 inch. Pretty general rain. We saw a lot of that focus again in areas further onto the western half of our region and working our way down into the south. Now, today overall, it was a warmer day. We saw temperatures work their way into the lower 80s. TYS saw around 0.6 inches of rain, so pretty decent right now. When it comes to temperatures, we're sitting in the 70s right now. We're seeing 70 degrees here in Knoxville, 67 in Rockwood, 67 in Wartburg as well. A bit of a cooler pocket here as you work your way down into the plateau. But let's talk a little bit more about the storms that we could be seeing as we get later into the evening time. We're going to do a little bit of a gear switch because luckily we are actually seeing conditions lighten. At least forecasts by the National Weather Service are actually getting a little bit weaker than what we were seeing beforehand. But right now, again, that rain is out of the way. We're seeing calmer conditions. As we get closer to about 10 o'clock, we're going to see that cloud cover start to increase ahead of the storms that'll be developing. And once we hit about midnight, that's when those storms are going to be incoming, likely from the north or the northwest. Now, when it comes to the impacts, these are some of the main ones we're looking at. Now, we've done a little bit of back and forth when it comes to the wind gusts that we're going to be seeing, but right now we're looking upwards of 60 miles per hour. When it comes to hail, we're now up to $half size hail. That is something that's grown, but earlier this afternoon around 3 p.m., the National Weather Service they had changed that a little bit. We were seeing 70 mile per hour wind gusts and golf ball size hail. That has actually changed a little bit. Now, speaking of hail, you guys might have saw this post earlier on Facebook or Twitter. Golf ball size hail is 1 3/4 inches. Quarter size hail is something we see pretty often when we have severe storms. That's 1 inch in diameter, and $half size is 1 1/4 inches. So still decent size hail. It's still pretty much within this same region, this same range of sizes that we could see. So that is something you're going to want to keep aware of. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to our severe chances, this map is really not something that has changed even as we've gotten through Saturday. So we have this level 1 risk as you get into upper East Tennessee. Most of our region is going to be in this level 2 elevated risk, even getting into most of the Central Valley, Southern Valley, into the plateau. And we have this little sliver here in parts of Fentress and a little bit of Scott County that's included in that level 3 risk. That's a part of the greater storm as you work further into parts of Middle Tennessee, up into the Ohio Valley, into Indiana and Ohio and Kentucky, and even further down south into parts of Mississippi and Arkansas. Now, here's a look at the radar we're seeing right now. This is the front that's going to be advancing a lot of these storms. You can see them already starting to convect in various areas. We've got an entire line of severe thunderstorm warnings as we get down into parts of in Georgia and Alabama. This is actually the primary system that was affecting us this afternoon. So it's now traveled from East Tennessee down to the middle of the state as we've gotten over these past, I'd say, 6 hours or so? Yeah, since about 2 o'clock when we had that first severe thunderstorm warning, including Knox and Anderson counties. You see here as we get into Mississippi, we've got a lot of warnings warnings here on the northern end, and even further up in Kentucky, you see just west of Lexington, they also have an entire line of severe thunderstorm warnings. So that could be a little bit of a telltale as to what these storms are going to look like when they run into the area. We've got possibly strong lines of storms approaching the area. We could see multiple severe thunderstorm warnings going on at once. Now, when it comes to cutting in or doing Facebook Live, that's something that's going to be a little TBD. Since a lot of people are going to be asleep at this time, I'm a little curious to see what the overall impact is going to be. It's going to be a full judgment call that I'll make in the moment, depending on how aggressively these storms start to move into the area. So from the regional view, as we continue through tonight, that front is going to start to advance, and those storms are going to push ahead of it, but really start to enter the area as we get around midnight. You can see this entire larger line developing along the front, right here passing through Ohio, starting in Middle Tennessee, and again further down south into Alabama and Mississippi. That's going to be approaching as we get into those late night hours. So say around 2 a.m., that's when we see those storms starting to really unify, work their way into the valley, and then weaken as they continue to make their way over through the mountains. Now, I was showing you the Storm Prediction Center's forecast earlier. I want to actually go back to that really quick. I had it on the regional view, but I'm going to skip back in. Now, based on this here, this could be kind of interesting to show whether we could get some lightning as we go through, like lightning, not lightning like lightning and thunder. Because if this is going to be the strongest risk out here, we drop that down to a level 2, that could signify a little bit of weakening in these storms as they continue to spread their way across. I'll show you in just a little bit in some of our more aerial Futurecasts, including just East Tennessee. So I'll switch over to that really quick and just kind of show you. There are two models that I'm looking at right now that are giving two very different stories. So this first model here, this one is going to be called the HER. This model had the timing down pat perfectly when we had some of those afternoon storms. So that's one of the reasons I want to start to push a little bit more towards this. But this model has been trending a lot more aggressive and also just a little bit slower. So now you see around midnight, we've got these storms coming more out of the north, coming out of Kentucky, and then they start to finally push down as we get into about 1 o'clock. So this trend, this new model trend, is now showing a much wider swath of storms going basically from east to west, end to end of those stronger storms. And we're seeing a lot of these deeper colors too, a lot of those purples and whites as well that could signify stronger storms coming into the area. Then as we get into 3 a.m., there's this larger mass as you get into upper East Tennessee, and still this stronger line of defined storms as you get onto the western end of our region. And really that continues. It really seems like we don't get a lot of weakening with those storms as they continue, as they push along the area. So still a lot of reds and oranges here on the east side, still with some of that purple as you work your way down into the I-75 corridor and down into the plateau in the valley. And then that continues to push out of the way pretty quickly. That happened kind of fast. So let me run that back a little bit. So you see here around 5 a.m., that's going to have, again, most of those purples are out of the way, but we're still seeing some pretty strong storms all the way up the highway, all the way down from the Southern Valley, working our way into upper East Tennessee, Athens, all the way up into Greenville. And so once we get into about 6 o'clock, that's when we see those storms starting to get out of the way. So with this one moving slower, this model was also not quite fitting the original time period that the National Weather Service was listing for storms to generally be peaking in at their strongest from 12 to 5 a.m. 12 a.m. being the beginning, 5 a.m. being the end. So with this also now pushing back a little bit longer, it's something that's making me a little bit unsure about this, like the timing is starting to fall apart a little bit. Then we see around 7, 8 a.m. That's when those storms are finally going to be moving further out of the way. Cloud cover going to be opening up as well. And then we continue to see that clarity into the end of the day. So that's possibility number one, the more aggressive one. I wanted to show you that just because it's worst case scenario and I want to keep you guys aware of the possibilities. But this second model is what I'm really starting to lean towards because it's aligning more with what we are hearing and seeing from the National Weather Service. So this model, this one is called the graph. It really works on that midnight timing. It's got the timing right. This one's going to be a little bit faster as well. So you see here coming out of our northwest, still that same direction that we were seeing with the first round of storms that we had, cloud cover coming in ahead of it. We get to around 1 a.m. We are now seeing a larger cluster of storms, a more defined line that we see as we go around even from Scott and Campbell County all the way down past Cumberland County. This is where we have that higher risk. This is where we see some of that level 3 risk and kind of transitioning into that level 2. And generally when we have severe storms, the plateau is where our strongest storms come from anyway before they start to drop off and become a little bit more disorganized, which is what we see. We get to around 2 a.m. as those storms are entering the valley. Now we get more clusters. This looks a lot more normal, a lot more like storms that we have seen in the past, and honestly, I think trends a little bit closer to what the National Weather Service was saying. Falling back on that tornado risk, winds coming back to about 60 miles per hour, hail bigger than usual, but that's going to be because we're seeing a lot of upper level support. There's really deep wind shear, but our boundary layer here at the surface meaning is very stable. So with a lot of convection happening up or higher up in the atmosphere, that's part of the reason that tornado risk is falling back, because we're not seeing that same risk and that same movement from top to bottom. We're seeing a little bit more stability as we get closer here into the surface. But yes, again, more of that scattered look as we start to see those storms work their way into the valley, and then that continues to push through. Maybe some reorganization as we get that upward lift as we go from the valley into the mountains, which definitely could cause some storms to pop back up before they continue to pass out of the area. So this is what I was saying. This model is also moving things a little bit faster. You see most of these storms out of the way by about 4 a.m., which is even earlier than what we were originally forecasting. Again, National Weather Service saying midnight to 5. So this still falls within that line, but I still wanted to show you both just so you could kind of know what we could expect. Worst case scenario and best case scenario. In reality, things are likely going to be somewhat in the middle. Again, that second model showing a lot more focus for our southern counties as well, just like the former storms that we had did. So kind of showing you again, a lot of focus here as we get further out into the west. That starts to break down more, and you see more just like a open, more even clusters of spread. Of course, once we get down into the valley, this model shows these storms losing some of that organization, which could still add up. Even when we have just kind of various clusters of storms, we can still get those gusty winds, those stronger downbursts, and that greater sized hail. So even though this might look a little bit weaker, all of those things are still going to be possible. Now, when it comes to rainfall, this model in particular is showing things kind of uniform. In reality, because these are going to be thunderstorms moving through the area with some heavier downpours, it's likely not going to be this even. Just like the rainfall I was showing you earlier, we had spots getting half an inch, and other spots getting 3.5 inches. It's likely going to be something more like that. Places that maybe don't get some of those stronger storms moving through might see around 1/2 inch, with those spots getting those heavier rainpours, seeing some much higher totals. So once we get past that, just to kind of look forward a little bit, we have a much nicer week coming up. You see that 30% chance here on your Monday, that's going to be coming from the storms that we see in the morning time. But like I showed you, either way, they're mostly moving out of the way, if not completely gone, by the time you're waking up or at least stepping out of the door on your Monday. So that's going to be something positive. And we do see a little bit of a cool down because of the associated cold front, but it does not seem to last long. We're still going to be in the 80s and even getting into the 90s as we get towards the end of the week. Now, there is still going to be a good bit of moisture in the air at some points. So as we get towards the end of the week, we could see some of those daytime heating-based showers, and we are looking at some rain chances once we get into the weekend, but that's 7 days out. Things are not definitive, and of course, we have bigger things to worry about in this particular moment. So now that I've gone through all of that, I'll take a second to look through some people's questions and see if there's anything that I should go back over or re-clarify for y'all. So let's see. Hello, Brian. It's good to see you again. You know, you were here during the last live. Kaylee is not here with us. She did the morning shows, and she actually was, she's going back home to Ohio for a little bit, and she needed to kind of do the dash a little bit earlier because, like I showed you earlier, Ohio is also seeing the possibility for some of those stronger storms. I want to say the region of Ohio she's in is actually under a tornado watch, so all the more reason to make sure that she is getting home early. Just to kind of show you again, we work our way up into Ohio. Actually, see if I can move this map a little bit. We work our way up into Ohio, and they have a lot of that level 2 risk just like we do, and some of that level 1 as well. So level 2 is you work your way further east towards the Dayton and Cincinnati areas, and we're seeing a line of strong storms earlier that was passing through Indiana and is going to start to work its way through. You can see this developing right along here. That's going to continue to grow and push its way over further east. So Kaylee needed to do the dash a little bit early just so she did not miss anything. But let's see. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry if the echo was bad, everybody. It's a very big studio. Sometimes if my noise is a little bit loud. Okay. We got some back and forth on who can hear. Hopefully you guys are still getting the message and everything. It might depend on where you're watching as well. If you're watching directly on Facebook, the phone itself might be getting a little bit of echo just because it's a big room and I'm the only one making noise. We also have our live stream going that's going to be playing on our WBIR channel, and that's the reason I have this microphone on. So that could be the reason that the difference in hearing could vary for some people. Let's see. All right, when it comes to hail size, so I'll take that back a little bit just to show you again on the impacts. Hail size is generally going to get up to $0.50. That's 1¼ inches in diameter, 1.25. Hail size is generally something that has varied a little bit. We were originally looking at quarter size. This is a newer increase. There were some reports in the Chattanooga area of golf ball size hail. That's 1.75 inches in diameter, but the National Weather Service has backed off from that forecast that they made about earlier in this afternoon. And that's going to be area wide. So whether you're in Powell, whether you're in Greenville, whether you're in Crossville, that is something that applies to everyone. Let's see. For those of you that are going to have anything outside, that's definitely something you want to make sure you're handling now while you have the opportunity. If you have your pets that you usually have sit outside during the nighttime, definitely make sure you bring them in. Very intense conditions that are not good for anything that's living. Your pets, your plants, yourselves, make sure they're going to be indoors. If you have anything that could fly away, any kind of outdoor furniture, bring those inside, throw them in the garage, anything like that. It'd be a good time to put your cars in the garage. Try to cover those if you can because of the possibility of that hail. Try to avoid a couple of dings if you can. Let's see. Sorry if I'm talking too fast, y'all. Working on slowing down a bit. Diamond, are you able to hear my microphone levels? Are they looking decent? Okay, there just seems to be a lot of back and forth here. And I could not. Maybe. That would be an interesting point. Okay, yeah, so I do think that just because the phone is a little bit distant, causing a little bit of trouble. Alrighty. Looks like. Okay, honestly, since I keep hearing about the sound, I'm just gonna grab the phone. Just make this a little bit easier for us. Oy. Alrighty. Flip that around. All right, hi guys, we're gonna switch up a little bit. So if we can turn over this way, I can give you a better look exactly what we're seeing when it comes to these storms. Hopefully this sound is a little bit better. The phone is right in front of my face, so if you can't hear me now, I don't know. I really hope that you can. So a couple people were asking, some people that are new to the live that did not catch it the first time. So I'm just going to start from the top for everything that we are seeing. So these are the potential impacts that we're looking at. We've seen our tornado threat drop very significantly. The National Weather Service has even put 0 because it's unlikely. I still want to leave this one little box just because we are still seeing some stronger storms. I want to play it safe, but it really looks like our tornado threat is declining. I've looked at multiple models that are showing that that threat is definitely dropping. We're not seeing as much of that instability. And again, we're not necessarily seeing the support at the base level here at the surface. While there is a lot of convection and high wind shear in the upper levels, it's not quite making it to the surface. We have some stability down here, so that's the reason that the tornado threat has dropped and is now unlikely. The main threats that we're looking at, hail is going to be number one, $0.50 size, that's 1.25 inches, and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We could also see some localized flash flooding. We've had a couple flood advisories go into effect. There was one right in the central area that included Knox, Anderson, Roane, Monroe. I want to say Blount counties as well, because they had a couple of stronger storms that were moving directly through the area. So we could see a couple more of those come during the overnight hours. So when you're headed out in the morning, that's definitely something to be careful of. It may not actually be raining. However, it could still be very wet outside. There could still be puddles. Make sure you always turn around, don't drown, avoid any kind of floodwaters because you never know how deep they actually are. Now this is a look again at those hail sizes. Quarter size hail, that's about 1 inch in diameter right here. Golf ball size hail, that's 1 3/4 inches. This is about the range that we're looking at. But National Weather Service has specified $0.50 size hail. It's not on this graphic, but it's 1.25 inches. So 1 inch to 1.25 inches is generally the hail size that we are going to be looking towards. Now, severe potential, again, there was a new update. Look at that in just the past couple of minutes. So now it looks like the National Weather Service has increased this level 2 risk to include pretty much the entirety of our area except this little tip here of upper East Tennessee. So now those of you in Greene and Cobb County, Claiborne County, you guys are going to be seeing that level 2 risk now. And we still have this level 3, not too much has changed here, level 3 cutting through Fentress and just this little tip here of Scott County. So a lot of people are asking, how are things going to be looking? Now that things are a lot more uniform when it comes to that severe risk, generally everybody is going to be looking at the same risk. So we zoom that out again. We have that severe potential. We can now see 2 pockets of those severe storms. This is likely due to the lower chance for tornadoes when we look at the base level and upper level support for some of those storms. We're now seeing just one little pocket here of that level 3 and a second one here. And now nearly the entire state of Tennessee is in that level 2 risk for severe storms. This is what we're looking at right now. Severe thunderstorms to our south in Georgia and Alabama. This is the first system that was impacting us. Looks like it's finally starting to weaken just a little bit. You see here getting into Kentucky, just to the east of or west of Lexington, we're seeing another line of those storms start to develop right along the border. We look further out into the west. We are seeing stronger storms make their way out of Arkansas, heading in towards Mississippi and the Memphis area as well. So what we're going to be expecting from the regional view, this cold front is going to continue to twist its way over and start to convect and create some of those storms as we get towards midnight. So that's when you see some of these showers starting to work their way in. You see stronger storms passing through the Nashville area. Further to our north, just south of Ohio, that's going to be passing through the Columbus area. And then further down into our south, you see between Tupelo and Jackson, Mississippi, even getting south of Birmingham, Alabama, we've got a lot of those stronger storms. We see around 2 a.m. coming into the Central Valley. That's when those stronger storms are going to start to push their way on through. And then that's going to start to weaken and move out of the way as we get to around 5 a.m. So a lot of people asking how bad their towns are going to be. So let's talk about the Futurecast again. So again, there are 2 different models that I'm looking at that give 2 different possibilities. So this first one is called the HUR, and it's the more aggressive of the 2 models. So this one moving a little bit slower. You can see just above that bar, we got some of those stronger storms coming. Now this one's showing that rain coming in around 2 a.m. So now that that's pushed back, we've got a line of strong storms coming nearly directly out of the north, but still generally moving from the northwest to the southeast. So a lot of our northern counties, that includes Hancock, Claiborne, Campbell, Scott, even Fentress counties, those are going to be some of the ones that get that first bout of rain as you make your way through. Moving to about 3 a.m., we see that rain start to spread out, really open up here as you get into parts of upper East Tennessee, but still a line of more defined storms as we work our way into the plateau. That's likely something that's born from the terrain. We're used to seeing a line of storms come out of the plateau, so it's easier to maintain that organization as they make their way further down to the south. But as you work your way into the valley in upper East Tennessee, things are a little bit varied. Upper East Tennessee is not as even though it is that higher elevation. And of course, the valley, we have that dip down between our 2 elevated regions on either side, our little pocket that the valley is usually stuck in. So that's why this becomes a little bit more widespread. It opens up, it loses some of that organization, but it could still hold some very gusty winds and some of that larger hail. We get to around 4 a.m. We're now seeing a large swath of stronger storms going from Bledsoe County, reaching all the way through the valley into upper East Tennessee. So we zoom that out. We're still seeing some emphasized strength on this model when you get further out into the west. We're now again seeing that elevated risk as you get into upper East Tennessee. So you guys are still going to be expecting some of those stronger storms. I gotta add some pause points there. Let me edit that just a little bit. So we see around 5 a.m. now this larger swath going to be sitting here, spreading over really most of the valley, the mountains, and the foothills. We get to around 6 a.m. Now this model is pushing mostly into the mountains and foothills. And as we finally move closer into around 8 o'clock, that's when that rain finally starts to move out of the way. Now this model has slowed down quite a bit, which is one of the reasons I'm not quite as sure about it. So I'll show you again the second model that I'm looking at that gives a little bit more definitive of an answer. So this model right here still holds on to the original timing that we were seeing. Again, we see those storms starting to enter the region around midnight. As we get to around 1 o'clock, more unified line of storms coming directly out of the northwest, going from parts of Campbell County all the way down into Cumberland County, and then continuing to spread and become more scattered in nature as it works its way into the valley. This is the way that a lot of storms move as they come into the area. They're a lot stronger once they get into the plateau and lose some of that organization as they drop down into the valley. So that could be what we're looking at again. this model looks a lot more normal, a lot like storms we've seen in the past. And the reason I kind of want to stick with this is because we've been seeing the National Weather Service back off a little bit from that forecast. We're seeing less of that tornado threat. We're seeing winds drop down a little bit. That risk now 60 miles per hour instead of 70 miles per hour. And then also that hail size. However, we are still seeing that upper level support. Hail size did increase just a good bit. I'm seeing Brian mention the possibility of losing power. That definitely is something that's possible. I'll actually move over to my little computer over here because I did have the power outages up on the area. So let's see what we are looking at right now. So there were a couple more that were happening as we were just getting past the afternoon, say around 3 to 4 p.m. But it seems like some people are starting to get their power back. Blount County, they at a time had about 1,800 people that were out of power. There's now a little under 900. Loudoun County had a little over 1,000 people that were without power, if not more. That's now down to under 100, so that's good news. Further down into Polk County, getting closer to Chattanooga area, they've only got about 100 people. Fenchurch County, only about 17. So it looks like power outages have improved, but it could be something that goes back down again overnight once we see those storms. I'd say luckily a lot of people are going to be asleep, so hopefully it doesn't get too uncomfortable at night. Hopefully you have like a generator or something like that that can keep your energy going if you specifically have any kind of life-saving technology in your home, like something that helps you breathe when you're sleeping at night, something along those lines. So just definitely make sure that you are going to be staying safe with that. I'm hearing Jessica Harper say she's been going for 8 hours with no power. That is extremely unfortunate. Sheila's saying the same thing for Lenore City. That I'm so sorry to hear that. It's extremely unfortunate. I hope you guys can get that power back before these storms pop back up as we get into the nighttime, but it is possible that it could go away again. Definitely something to be aware of. This would be a good time again to gather your emergency supplies, whether you need batteries for your flashlight, some extra water, pulling together your snacks, charging your devices. That is actually something that is very important. Make sure you are charging your devices during these hours before we get to those storms. So make your phones are charged, iPads, anything that can maintain a signal so that you can still get all of your alerts as you're getting into these nighttime hours. So normally, I know a lot of people like to keep their phone off, keep their phone on do not disturb, sleep mode. Even I like to do that myself. However, because of these storms coming during the overnight hours, you definitely need to make sure you have a way to get your alerts, whether that's through our app, whether that's through the National Weather Service, whether that's through Facebook. Make sure that if these alerts are coming through, whether it's severe thunderstorm warning or God forbid a tornado warning, you have the alerts that you are able to properly take action and keep yourselves and your family safe as we're getting into these overnight hours. So this again is going to be something that's happening around midnight. So some people could be getting themselves into bed until around 5 a.m. So around when some people are starting to wake up. That's around the time period that we're looking at for a lot of these storms. But let's go ahead and switch on back over to the Futurecast. I know a lot of people are still asking about their towns. Again, so 2 a.m. right here. Honestly, why not just start from the jump? Let's start from the front. So again, this is the second model that I've been looking at right now, the one that I want to lean a little bit more towards because it's aligning a bit more with what the National Weather Service is saying. So these storms are showing up around midnight, coming out of the northwest. You see just starting to enter Fenchurch County. We get to around 1 a.m. We're seeing a more unified line of storms work their way through. But as they work their way into the valley, we see a little bit more of separation. We see them break up a bit more into clusters. This looks a bit more normal in terms of storms that we've seen before. We could still get those gusty winds up to 60 miles per hour. We could still get that large hail up to $half size, but it's not quite as intimidating as that last model was looking. We get to around 3 a.m. Those of you in upper East Tennessee and along the mountains and foothills, some uplift as we go from the valley into the mountains could cause some storms to regrow and kind of redevelop that strength. So we could see some stronger storms as you get into the edge of a little bit Blunt, Sevier, even Cock and Greene counties as well. That's going to continue to push out of the way. This model, I said again, is moving faster too. So you see this is only at 4 a.m. that this model has those storms moving out of the region. So that's another reason I kind of want to lean towards this model because it stays within the time period that the National Weather Service was giving. It's a little bit hopeful moving those storms out of the way more quickly as well. Now, when it comes to rainfall, again, we could still see some heavier downpours, but it looks like for those of you that are not going to be getting those consistent, stronger thunderstorms, rainfall could be sitting around 1/2 inch. That's what this middle green is right here. So let me double check again, make sure I'm not missing any questions. Let's see. We saw the power. Also, really praying for you guys in Loudoun County, Lenore City. I'm hearing a lot of people are still without power. So yes, Ashley, we're really looking like no tornadoes, not really in Morgan County, really anywhere. But I would say if we are going to be looking at tornado risk, let me switch up a little bit. Back to the Storm Prediction Center's risk. So with this newer update, again, most of our area, pretty much all of our area now in this level 2 elevated risk for storms. National Weather Service did say that the threat potential for tornadoes has significantly decreased near zero. So if we are going to see a tornado risk, I would really put it generally in this area as we get to the northwestern plateau, getting close, or if not around Fentress County, maybe some spots as we get into the plateau, just because the plateau is a good space for tornadoes to form. But again, that risk is low. And I would say if it is going to happen, again, it's going to be something that happens somewhat early. So if you're a bit of a late sleeper, it takes you a while to get to bed, you could still be awake when some of those warnings go up. We'll definitely make sure to keep you guys updated on everything that happens. But with the plateau already being a decent space terrain-wise for tornadoes to form, if they do come, despite them being unlikely, I would say they would be most likely somewhere in this kind of brown-orange area, or I'd say somewhere immediately around it into the plateau. So if you want to play things on the safe side, Fentress County, Morgan County, Cumberland, even a little bit of Scott County, you guys are definitely going to be the most likely if anyone is going to see tornadoes. But that is something that is, again, trending to go away. Now, Rockwood, getting towards that Roane, Morgan, Cumberland County, that is around the area that storms could be starting to weaken as they make their way down into the valley. So again, strongest as they're making their way in, likely weakening or losing some organization as they work their way into the rest of the plateau in the valley and continuing to push their way out of the region. Now let's see here. Someone is asking about Burke and Emmanuel County, and I'm so sorry, Nicole, I don't know if I've heard of those. Let's give those a quicker look right now. Oh, in North Carolina. Okay. I see. Well, why not? If we take this out a little bit and go back to look at the severe thunderstorm warning, looking that Burke County is somewhere in this area, in this level 1, you're going to be seeing these storms after they make their way across the mountains. You'll get that uplift going into the mountains. They'll likely start to dissipate a little bit after that point, after crossing through that region. So I'm definitely assuming that storms, as you work your way into the western edge of North Carolina, are going to be weaker than what we'll be seeing as we get into eastern Tennessee. Rebecca and Todd and Kaylee are definitely all staying safe. For those of you guys that were wanting some updates on them, Todd just made his way back into town today, so you will definitely see him once you get into your tomorrow evening. He'll be back for all those midday shows. Rebecca is still in town. Her and I have been communicating about these storms. There will be some overlap between her and myself, so you will see her in the morning when some of those storms are going to be going on. You'll see me for heading into the late night hours. She'll likely make her way in to get ready for the morning show, and then we'll do a little tag team before I likely head out. By the time that Becca is getting things started with our morning time shows, storms should be weakening or at least on their way out, so it could be a bit more of a trade-off. But you will be seeing Rebecca in the morning, and Kaylee's taking a little time off. Usually she's off around this time. She's heading back up to Ohio, I'm thinking to see some family for the time period. She is also going to be affected by these storms, but she is out of the way. She's home safe with her family and definitely where she needs to be. But I know they appreciate you asking about them. You guys are a very caring group. So tornado warnings, again, very unlikely at this point. All righty, let me head back down. I'm seeing a new question. How about for Knoxville? We might lose power. Yep, saw that. Let's see. It is safe to go to bed tonight. I don't want to stop anybody from sleeping. I don't want to have you, shaking, nervous, unable to go to bed at night, you can still go to sleep. Don't let things interrupt your overall schedule, but just make sure you have your alerts on. Maybe don't put the phone in sleep mode and complete do not disturb. Don't shut yourself out from any kind of alerts that could come through simply because of the possibility of some of those severe thunderstorm warnings. Well, really the likeliness of severe thunderstorm warnings. When it comes to tornado warnings, that's something that is looking more unlikely, starting to trend away. That is something to make sure you keep in mind. If you're living in a trailer, definitely make sure you're being safe. If it's possible, get to a building that is more secure, something that, is fully attached into the ground and it's got concrete and all that good stuff to help keep yourself safe. But I'm definitely praying for you guys. Definitely make sure you're keeping things comfortable. I'm seeing Knoxville, Greenville, Athens. Okay, so it looks like Spring City. Alrighty, yeah, so I'll take some time to go over. No, unfortunately, Kelly, Crossville is not in the clear. We still have a second round of storms coming, and everybody is going to get a taste of some of these storms coming through. So looks like a lot of people just asking for their specific areas. I'll take a second to go over the Futurecast one or two more times. So let's go ahead and flip this back around. So this is the current radar that we have. Nothing in East Tennessee yet. This is something that's going to be developing as we get later into the nighttime. So we are going to be seeing, again, severe thunderstorm warnings to our north, to our south, and further out into our west as well. There's now a tornado warning in the Memphis area, or the Memphis area getting into northern Mississippi. So our tornado threat has declined. That's something that has been said specifically by the National Weather Service. Our tornado threat is much lower because we're seeing stability as we get into the lower boundary layer, which is going to be closer to the surface. It looks like there's a newer update from the National Weather Service, and they've made a bit of a change. So let's see here. With the new, oh, did that turn it off? Okay, my bad, guys. Didn't mean to switch things up a little bit. I'll just use a different phone. So there's a new alert coming from the National Weather Service. And you know what? We'll just kind of switch over here. And if we just go to Twitter, that will tell us about everything we need to know. We are going to notifications. All right, so this is a new tweet from the National Weather Service that came out a literal minute ago. So they've changed things out a little bit. You can see here on the severe weather update, tornadoes at a 0. Damaging winds and large hail are going to be our 1 and 2 main threats that we're looking at. They've also increased the timeline a bit. So now we're looking at 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. beginning to end, and we're seeing that timing change from 2 to 5 a.m. So that's a little bit of a shift. I showed you earlier the Storm Prediction Center. That's something that has grown. We're now mostly seeing elevated risk as we get into this area. Tornado threat, again, National Weather Service is saying we are at a 0. Hail and strong winds going to be our main concerns with this. So those of you living in a trailer, I'm sorry I've been scaring you this whole time. We are seeing very, very low tornado threat with some of these storms. Timing is changing a little bit, so that could somewhat edit the way that we're looking at these storms. Remember, I was taking you between two different models that were giving me kind of two different vibes for how this night could go. So if we talk a little bit about the timing, here's this first model again. We'll move back onto the bigger screen. So they're now saying about 1 to 6 a.m. So they've pushed things back a little bit. That kind of falls in line with this first model again. So now again, we're seeing around 2 a.m., 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. We're seeing those storms entering this top line, going basically from Fentress all the way over into Claiborne County and beyond, and continuing to push its way further down south. Again, this is definitely a more extreme model. We're seeing a larger swath of storms here as we get into parts of upper East Tennessee. Again, mainly going to be seeing hail and gusty winds. If there were going to be tornado threat, I would be most likely to put it over into the northwest, getting past Fentress County, because that's where that level 3 risk is going to be. But even that's something that has been changing. But we're seeing this more unified, stronger line of storms on the western side of the region, continuing to push its way further down south. 4 a.m., we've got a whole line of strong storms reaching across the entirety of East Tennessee. We get to around 5 a.m., we're now seeing a larger swath. We're getting kind of a bigger build to some of that rain. That could show some disorganization because we're not seeing that greater line. 6 a.m., you're now seeing those stronger storms move into the mountains and foothills in upper East Tennessee, and we get to about 7 or 8, that rain is going to be moving out of the way. So this starts to fit what the National Weather Service was just saying with that newer update. But just in case, I'll show you the second model that I was looking at in the meantime, see if there are any updates on this one. So this is also coming in around midnight to 1 a.m., fully impacting the area at that time period. This one has more of that northwest to southeast direction. You can see it a bit more clearly as it pushes its way through. More unified line of storms as we get into parts of northwestern plateau, but opening up and becoming a bit scattered as it works its way into the valley. So that's going to continue to push its way on through. We could see some reorganization once we start to get into the mountains, that uplift that comes from the valley into the mountains. And then those will continue to push on through. This model is also moving a lot faster, having those storms out of the way by 4 a.m. So that is something that now is starting to be a little bit of a moment of concern. If I run back to the National Weather Service, what they were saying, they've got that peak from about 2 to 5 a.m., but the entire event lasting from 1 to 6 a.m. So that's the time period we're looking at right now. That's about everything I have for you guys. So I'll continue to post Futurecast. Keep waiting for some updates. We've got our 10 o'clock show coming up on Fox 43 in about a little under 30 minutes. So if you want some more answers, if you want to hear a little bit more from me, I'll be there during our 10 o'clock show at Fox 43, and then also during our 11 o'clock show back on our normal Channel 10. So that's about all I've got for you guys. The last storm was very intense, but we're not looking at that same intensity because, again, with the Storm Prediction Center, we're not getting that same level 3 risk that's taking over a lot of the area. It's just a little bit of a sliver this time, with most of us seeing that level 2. So if there's anything else you guys want to know, make sure you can comment on Facebook posts. You can DM us specifically, either me, myself, or our WBIR weather page. I'll be sure to get to your questions, answer anything I can so that you guys can go to sleep comfortable. And again, make sure you bring anything outside, inside, pets, plants, outside furniture, have a generator, something along those lines to make sure you can maintain power if you can, and keep your alerts on tonight so that you can stay aware if anything really pops off that you need to make sure you're being safe doing. So that's about all I've got for you right now, and I will see you guys in a couple of minutes.